Batman was incomplete until the madness returned. Welcome to the 4th year of the Bronze Bat, where we continue the history of Batman in the Bronze Age of comics. In the previous episode, we learned about the master criminal of escape, the Spook. Despite his dumb name, he was a headache for both Batman and the police, because no matter how much they tried to capture him, the Spook always had a trick under his sleeve to escape. And so it was that Batman disguised himself as a criminal to try to capture the Spook, but he failed, and without much clues left, he backtracked on his previous encounter with the Spook until he found the secret entrance to the Spook's hideout. When Batman finally confronted the Spook, he was unable to capture him, but the Spook was so gullible and fool that he told Batman the secret of his tricks, and Batman then finally captured the Spook. However, the mystery just starts, because when Batman takes the Spook to the police, he learns that he is in fact Val Caliban, a criminal that was killed in the electric chair 10 years ago. Quite interesting, but now we'll leave this mystery on hold for a while because something absolutely important happened right after that. The stories about the Spook were all taking place in Detective Comics, but what about the Batman comics? Well, after the Ra's al Ghul saga, Dennis O'Neil and Neil Adams took a break to do other comics, and Frank Robbins started writing the next few issues with Irv Novick doing the art. For this reason, the stories were all regular Batman tales with normal criminals. However, when Dennis O'Neil and Neil Adams were ready to return, they delivered the most important comic book of 1973 in Batman 251, The Comeback of the Joker. The story was called The Joker's Five-Way Revenge. With Neil Adams' illustrations and the plot by Denny O'Neil, Batman 251 is probably the most important Joker comic book ever. The last time the Joker appeared was still during the Silver Age with a camp style, when Batman and Robin still worked as a team. When the Bronze Age started, Batman became a loner and his stories returned to the dark style of the original Golden Age Batman. However, this also meant that all the crazy villains were pushed away because they were too close to that goofy Batman from the 60s TV show. During the Bronze Age until this point, the only villain that returned was Two-Face, because he never appeared during the camp days of the Silver Age or in the TV show. But still, you can't have Batman without his villains. So it is that after 4 years of absence, they decided to bring back Batman's greatest enemy, the Joker. Neil Adams, the artist who made Batman dark and scary, once again was responsible of the redesign of the Joker. Adams didn't change much of the Clown Prince of Crime, except that he made him very thin and his jaw a bit larger. On the other hand, Denny O'Neil had a much bigger task because the Joker needed to fit in the new Batman stories, in which everything is very realistic and dark. Denny O'Neil was challenged to change the Joker because the character had turned into a silly prankster that came up with harmless crimes ever since the late Golden Age. Just like what he did with Batman a few years back, O'Neil went back and read the first appearances of the Joker to understand the original idea of the Golden Age Joker, a murdering psychopath who was obsessed with Batman. Because the story needed to be grounded and realistic, O'Neil needed to find a reason for the Joker to exist, because the law would never allow such a criminal to remain alive. Like this, O'Neil came up with the idea that the Joker was always locked away in a mental hospital for the criminally insane. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? With all these elements combined, the Joker's Five-Way Revenge is a classic Joker tale that redefined the greatest villain in comic books. The Joker has escaped from the mental hospital and he wants revenge against the criminals that betrayed him and allowed Batman to capture him. One by one, the Joker murders his victims, using his trademark Joker venom and other gruesome methods. Batman becomes aware of the return of the madman to the streets and he goes looking for the criminal, but in a twist of fate, he is the one who ends up captured. The Joker could have easily killed Batman then, but he decides to leave and come up with a better way to kill the Dark Knight. Batman recovers and tracks the Joker to his hideout inside an aquarium, where the madman is waiting for him with his last victim hanging on a death trap. Batman tells Joker to take him instead, but when Batman is under Joker's control, the madman pushes them both inside a shark tank. Batman fights the shark and breaks the tank, releasing them from a certain death. Joker then tries to escape, but Batman captures him even though he was really exhausted. As you can see, the story is extremely good, and the success of this comic provided the writers a reason to consider bringing back all the other Batman villains who were left behind at the start of the Bronze Age. Fun fact, this story was also partially adapted in Batman the Animated Series on the episode The Laughing Fish. The climax of the episode where Batman fights the shark is taken directly from this story. After that amazing story, we return to solve the mystery of the Spook. Remember how he was supposed to be dead for over 10 years? As it turns out, he managed to hypnotize a man that looked exactly like him and force him to die in his place. And that's it. That's how it ends. The mystery of the Spook. I believe that after 3 years of doing mystery and horror stories, Frank Robbins just couldn't help making fun of the whole concept. And what can I tell you? Some stories were good and others not so much. An example of a good story was in Batman 253, where Batman meets the Shadow, that mysterious pulp hero that lurks in the darkness getting revenge and taking criminals to justice. And just in case you're not aware, the Shadow is a pulp hero from the 1930s, and all you need to know is that Bob Kane and Bill Finger were heavily inspired by the Shadow when they created Batman, so that's what makes this a good story. However, not everything was success over in Batman Land. Detective Comics, Batman's first home, was not selling very well. Despite the good efforts that were made to change the character and make it the dark, awesome figure we love, the book was just not selling. A great part of this was because Batman was always capturing common criminals and never fighting his rogues gallery. DC would not cancel that comic, but editor Julius Schwartz decided not to keep working on the title. As a result, a new editor and writer was assigned to Detective Comics. The legendary Archie Goodwin started writing and editing these stories in Detective Comics, and he also changed the artists. Most importantly, he hired Jim Aparo, who is a legend when it comes to Batman. But this was not Aparo's first work in the Batman books. Previously, he became the main artist in Brave and the Bold after Neil Adams started working in Batman. Brave and the Bold was the team-up title that featured Batman working with almost every character in the DC universe, and Jim Aparo was chosen because his style was very similar to Neil Adams, as he could also make Batman dark and menacing. Jim Aparo and Archie Goodwin became the main team in Detective Comics, but because the title was not selling, DC changed the publication schedule for the first time in 35 years, and Detective Comics stopped being a monthly comic book and was only published every other month. But these were not the only changes. To improve the sales, Detective Comics and Batman became 100 pages comics, with most of the content being reprints of old comics. The price also changed from 20 to 50 cents, and all this was done to try to boost the sales of these comics. Now, despite these changes, the stories never stopped, and some of them were actually pretty good, like the first story from Detective Comics 438. This story is called The Monster of Wayne Manor. As we all know, Batman moved away from Wayne Manor and started living in his penthouse in the middle of Gotham. For this reason, Wayne Manor was abandoned, but now someone has broken into the place and was destroying it from inside. People had started the rumor about a monster living in Wayne Manor, but when Alfred goes to investigate, he is attacked by a horrible man, but certainly not a monster. Batman soon learns of this and he is forced to go down to the old Wayne Manor. Once there, Batman finally confronts the monster, who is none other than Ubu, the faithful servant of Ra's al Ghul. Ubu was left behind in Rage's secret hideout and he was exposed to the Lazarus pit when the whole place exploded. The explosion would have killed Ubu, but the Lazarus chemicals kept him alive, although his mind was now permanently twisted. Turned into this monster, Ubu went to Wayne Manor to get revenge on Batman, as he knew Batman's secret identity as Bruce Wayne. Batman and Ubu fight for a while until Ubu stabs himself in a splinter wood and dies. This is truly a wonderful story that you should read because this is just a short version. And now, to end this year, two small events happened. The first one was the return of Man-Bat, who finally managed to control the transformation and help Batman against some thugs in Batman 254, and the second event was the confrontation between Batman and the werewolf. This is one of the classic Batman stories that were adapted in Batman the Animated Series. The story title is Moon of the Wolf, and one fun fact that nobody knows is that this issue is the first time in which Batman saves a person using the free fall technique. You know, that move that is now always used in the movies and video games with Batman. It first appeared in this story thanks to Len Wein and Neil Adams. And before ending this episode, I want to recommend you to read the single best Batman story of this year and probably the best Batman story ever. The story is called Night of the Stalker, first released in Detective Comics 439. One of the most interesting facts about this story is that it was created using the Marvel method, meaning that it was first drawn and the dialogue was included later. All in all, this is a real classic and you must read it. So go do it. There's a link in the description where you can buy the book. It is one of my favorite Batman stories. And with that, we end this episode of the Bronze Bat. Now, make sure to subscribe and come back for the next episode, because you don't want to miss the return of the Rogues Gallery or the secret of Batman's brother. All of these in year 5 of the Bronze Bat.